yelled at my mom, and I was like, I hate you. And she was just, it like really, it hurt her. She had this conversation with me. And when I was a teenager, I thought the conversation was so messed up, because she was like, I could die tomorrow, and that'd be the last thing you ever said to me.
You want to sort of save your child from the guilt that people feel when that does happen, right? But at the same time, there's always it's that other side of it.
Obviously, it's something I never forgot.
Yeah.
Right? And it impacted me in a way that was very meaningful, that I always made sure that she knew that I loved her.
You are our first official guest on our podcast.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we actually talked about having you as our first guest, so it's all worked out great.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yeah.
I don't take those types of things for granted, so I appreciate that so much.
We appreciate it.
So for those who don't know, this is Bliss's amazing mother, who has raised
Four.
Yeah.
Me
Four
and Katie
Totsi.
are not the same person, even though she had 3 pregnancies, right? Like 3 births.
3 births.
But 4 children.
4 children.
Yeah, you did double time, right? Because Totsi came in right as Bliss was in her teenage years.
Yeah, I had just turned. I was about to turn 15 when she was born, because Totsi is early September. I'm late September. Me and Jevin are late September, so we were just about to turn 15 when she was born.
Well, I planned my children. I didn't plan to have twins, and I didn't know I would have a kid at 40, but you know, having a plan kind of helped me kind of stagger you guys. So I'm glad that I kind of waited till Annalie would be almost 3 to have both of you. And then
why did you wait until she was 3? Like, why 3?
I read that the best time to have another child is when the oldest would be close to 3. And I'm glad it kind of worked out that way for me, because that was like a mental plan that I had in my head. So,
is that so the child's a little bit more self-sufficient?
Yeah, a little bit more self-sufficient, completely out of diapers, and able to bring diapers and kind of be a helper as well. And also be a part of that experience, like knowing, remembering having a little brother or sister come along. So that was a good experience, I think, like for Annalie to remember when you guys were babies.
She does. And she was like, you guys ruined my life. I had this perfect life, and then you guys came along. And
oh, no. Well,
she loves us. We're so close together, but she also was kind of like, I could have done without you, maybe.
Well, no. I mean, if you asked her now, she would be like, I am so glad that I had you guys. And
no, it's a joke, because you had us for her, really.
Yes, definitely. I did not want to have my child go through this world alone. And I wanted my kids to have each other, to also be each other's friends, like to be friends with each other. Yeah. And that's really where a friendship can come from. And I see that now. I mean, even the other day when Tatiana was asking Annalie a question, then she put her hands on her, you know, and held her and looked at her and she talked to her. And it was just like such a genuine moment when you guys are so endearing to each other that it's just something that just comes so naturally with you. Yeah. So that is like really important.
Well, I remember when I was the maid of honor at my sister's wedding. And I remember when I gave my speech, it was something that you and Dad both actually purposefully, I felt, did. You both cultivated for us to be close to our siblings. Like, we are what we have. That is what will always be constant, is your siblings. Right. And your parents, may pass, and you still have your siblings. And like you and Alexa, I feel it's so cool and beautiful how close you and Alexa are, even though you have that 9-year, age gap. You're really, she loves you so much. You guys tell each other you love each other even when you leave the room. I noticed when you guys, I don't even think you guys are aware that you do that, but it was just really sweet to see that.
Yeah, it was something interesting. After my mom died, I noticed Alexa started doing that intentionally, where she would tell us that she'd tell me specifically she loved me every time before she would leave. And when I was a kid, I remember this moment. My mom and I got in this really heated argument. I was little. I believe I was really upset because my cousin had punched me in the gut
Nick.
on the trampoline. And I was crying and crying, and no one came to coddle me. And so I just stayed out on the trampoline. I was like so angry.
No one's like checking on me, or am I okay?
No one's
Or,
responding to me wailing on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you about?
I think maybe like 5 or 6.
Oh, you were still young. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the age where you still want to be coddled. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I yelled at my mom and I was like, I hate you. And she was just, it like really, it hurt her. And she was just like, and I remember as a kid, I was angry and she was really hurt. And she had this conversation with me. And when I was a teenager, I thought the conversation was so messed up because she was like, I could die tomorrow. And that'd be the last thing you ever said to me. And as a kid, I thought that was kind of manipulative, like as a child. And then as a teenager, like it was a moment that I thought about. And after that moment, I never said that again. That was the only time I ever said that. And I always would tell her, like, I love you, like before we would get off the phone. But then as an adult, after my mother passed, I thought about the context of it and how her father had died in a car wreck.
I was going to ask if that's why you think she said that.
Yeah, it really affected her. And that was the last moment. And I don't know precisely how the terms that they left on. But I know that it haunted her for a very, very long time. In fact, one of the regrets she had that she told me was she regretted going and seeing his body after he died because she never could forget it.
That's the last image she has of him.
Yeah, so I never went to go see her body when she died.
Good idea.
And I don't regret that. But I remember my sister, after my mother's death, I noticed that she would intentionally make sure she told me she loved me every time after I left. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I remembered that, and I was thinking about how that probably affected her. But yeah, that's why she does that, I'm sure. We've never actually talked about that.
Life is precious. Is that what you would rather your mom have said? Like, life is precious and words can...
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Because our generation didn't know how to do that, but we do now.
My mom did that to me. Like, I could, and it was almost a little bit of a manipulation. And sometimes there's a place for manipulating your kids in ways.
In a good way.
Not in a negative way. I don't really know. But she would make us say that we felt like if we ever left her and didn't say I love you, or we were mad at her, we could never leave on bad terms. But it also caused me high anxiety that she was going to die every time that I wasn't with her. So like, what is that balance of
because you're trying to not let you want to sort of save your child from the guilt that people feel when that does happen, right? But at the same time, there's always it's that other side of it. So even with your baby, it's like, we're going to teach her that life is precious. And we always tell people that we love each other when we leave. And love is the answer to everything, right? So being purposeful and having a conversation, because that experience now is going to make you be an even better communicator. And you're going to wear that hat of when you were 5, when you communicate with her, because you don't want her to walk away with these negative feelings, right? Yeah.
So my mom has been an educator for decades at this point, because I'm an accountant. When you did, you were doing
teaching
daycare
preschool.
and teaching preschool and all of that.
In Japan, teaching preschool in Japan.
So what is one or two, or Zach, do you want to answer that question that we asked you about, would you rather your mom have done that or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit harsh, and there's a lot of context of things that maybe I would have preferred to have been different. But I think having that realistic conversation, it's hard to talk about death, especially with a child,
and in our culture in particular.
But the reality is, it's part of life. It's a part of being human, and you can't really shield a child from that completely. So while it was maybe kind of a pretty hard conversation, it's obviously something I never forgot.
Yeah.
Right. And it impacted me in a way that was very meaningful, that I always made sure that she knew that I loved her, after every argument we had. Sometimes you comment on that. You're like, why do you always tell me? We'll argue, and I'll be like, I love you.
Yeah, you do that. I didn't realize it. Yeah, this is a total epiphany for me, because it would sometimes make me annoyed, because it's like, that doesn't just fix everything. Like, I'm still, but I get that, and there's someone saying, thank you, baby, because that's something that I feel like I'm now going to appreciate that you do.
I think that I wouldn't change that conversation. I think it was very impactful, and it made me think more critically about my words as a child, although it was maybe harsh. So no, I don't think I would have changed that. There's things that, like, obviously I would have preferred to have happened indifferently in my childhood, but yeah, I don't know about that conversation, but I was so upset.
Did she coddle you after you told her you were mad?
I don't know if she saw what happened. I don't know if maybe I tried to explain it. I don't know. I was just very angry. In hindsight, knowing how articulate I was at 5 years old, explaining what had happened and why I was upset, it probably was not as clear.
Or maybe it was because you were like this, according to your family, you were very articulate to us as child. Because when at Aunt Jody's wedding, when he was saying you're throwing the flowers or whatever, he was like 2.5 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Like when you see the picture, he's a full baby.
Oh, like Emmy.
Little. Like a baby. Actually, I think there's probably a picture in here on it. Because he was like a baby. Your mom would probably be so confused around other children your age and be like, that's how old that's him.
Oh.
Like that's when he was saying, right? Isn't that it?
Yeah.
Oh, you had like a huge sense of awareness. Oh, this is precious right here. This is.
We'll have to look through more of this later, but so cute and chubby. My question I was going to ask, just through all of your years of being around children and being a parent and teaching children, what's maybe one or two things that you feel are so important in maybe like being a parent and parenting, and or in education of a child? Because parents maybe sometimes don't realize how key of a role they actually play in the education of their child. They think they go to school and that's their teacher's job, and maybe I'll help them with their homework or whatever, but it's so much more of an impact that the parent actually has than a teacher does.
I think exposing your child and talk to every media, allowing the baby to touch the roses, to experience this world around them, to allow them to ask questions, to tell them, to speak to them, to speak the unspoken language. Like, we're safe here at home. Giving that validation and always remembering how you felt as a child, as your driving force to communicate with them. Even like with Addie, she got on the stairs and I was able to see her eye level. It's important to look in your child's eyes.
Like get on their level.
Yeah,
like
get on their level.
Or pick them up.
Yeah, or pick them up and have a lap time. Have that time where they sit on your lap or sit next to you, and let them be the director of what the conversation, giving choices to kiddos. But the most important thing is expressing love and knowing that you are the role model, knowing that you have an audience all the time. So if you're taking Asher for a walk and you have the baby with you and, oh, look at that flower died, but look at that flower's alive, and having those conversations about death in a way that they see that it's just part of life, like you said. I think, that physical touch, those hugs, and even, those little rubs, all of those things contribute to who you're growing, this human. And if you look at, like you said the other day, keeping this child alive is like my job. Yeah. And every part of that, it's not just keeping this human alive, but it's stimulating them and loving them and addressing that unspoken language and just letting kids know that how important they are. how seen they are and how they matter. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that allows even my students that I only have for 9 months, but telling them this is a safe place. And no matter what, mistakes are an opportunity to learn. What mistake did you make today in school? Oh, wow, I've made that mistake before. Who learned from that? I think everything is paramount in learning. Whatever the kids do throughout the day, everything is a learning experience because we see people make choices, but there's no learning involved. They don't do that self-reflection. So I think, holistically, just think of it as a holistic approach to raising this human. Mm-hmm. And, I think you guys already have that when you talk about what you foresee for your children.
I think those are all really great things. And it makes me think about sometimes in my childhood, one thing I remember really well, and I keep forgetting and remembering what it is. Now I just remember it again. Okay, good. Was that you would say that just because someone is an adult doesn't mean that they've earned your respect or that you need to listen to them. Because I think oftentimes people are like, you're just a kid and you don't know anything.
You don't matter.
You don't matter. And that validation allowed, like you teaching me, if an adult tells you to do something, that doesn't mean that you have to do it.
Right.
And I
Giving
remember times like drawing boundaries, like telling someone stop, like, and I know, like, I'm not going to listen to you. I don't have to just honor my elders and listen to my elders because adults, number one, are not necessarily always smarter than the kid, and number two, may not have your best interest at heart, maybe trying to cross some weird boundary, and you did a really good job, I feel, with that, like where we felt confident telling adults no or not listening to them because that didn't feel right.
Exactly. And that happens a lot, right? And I even tell my students, just because someone has been on this earth longer, even more so, they should be the first ones to respect you. I would always say adults need to respect children first
because
they're the adult, but that doesn't always happen. And so following, really developing that internal, intrinsic, intuitive self in the child.
Yeah, maybe that's why me and Annalie and Jevin and Tatiana are such intuitive people. Like, and trust that so much because we've been trusting that since we were children and it wasn't ever invalidated.
And that keeps you safe, right? That keeps you safe, and that when they're not with you.
Yeah, that can definitely help keep you safe. Zach and I talked about the password thing, and I was telling him about, you want to share? Because I think that's another huge thing, allowing your child to be empowered to keep themselves safe.
You mean like your only family word, right? Yeah, like creating a safe word, especially now with AI, and they say that people can call and they said to say, like, they have to say the password, and just practicing those little things keeps your family safe, especially when you're not together. So I think it's important to come up with a family word.
Yeah.
And that is just something that we all know. Even our bigger family, we should have, I think we do. We have a couple of words that we would say that everyone would know, I need help, or
like
is
an
this
example
safe?
you would give us is like if someone came up and was like, oh, your mom told me to come pick you up from school. You'd have to be like, what's the password?
Right.
And my mom would be like, okay, well, what if they're like, well, does it start with a P? Does it start with an L? And we weren't allowed to be like, yeah, it starts with a P or it starts with an L.
And most kids do that.
Right. So like she was very, very purposeful. And if I didn't give them the password, you are not to go with them.
Right. And we would role play. So I think that was a big thing to help us through life, is to role play situations verbally. Like, how do I get out of this situation, or how do I attack this situation?
I love
so
that.
There was a lot of role play.
I think that'll be really important for us to do.
A lot of role play and validation. I think kids just need to be validated. I mean, they're just these sweet little souls, and people need to know that children are, they're going to grow up to be these adults. Like, what would it be that we would raise our children purposefully with all this perfect, wonderful stuff, and then they would then pay it forward? They would be able to build healthy relationships. They would be able to navigate life in a more successful manner, and they would actually be more happy adults. and then they would pay it forward
The
with
world
their
would be a
children.
happier place then.
Exactly. So that is one of my biggest charges, is to help the world just be happier.
Well, let's talk about what Bliss and I are getting ready to do,
What?
which is be first-time parents.
Yeah.
So any tips for the first 3 months?
First 3 months, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, communicate, and just know that whatever you're experiencing is going to prepare you to be the best parents. Even, stop and reflect. Why am I experiencing this? This is so hard. It's preparing you for your life, and it is a beautiful thing. So just really being there for each other and being verbal about it. Don't assume. Like, I go back to the 4 agreements. Don't assume that the other one knows, even though you're married and even though you have a baby, that you know what's happening in each other's minds, and ask questions for clarity. I think that's a big thing. Don't assume, oh, I'm going to this or I'm going to that. And just whisper in the baby's ear and just tell the baby how much you love it, and talking to the baby, incessantly talking,
Not
asking
during nighttime,
questions.
though.
Yeah, not at night. I messed that up with Anna Lee, because I would get her and I would talk to her at
Stimulate
midnight and I
them.
would stimulate her, and her eyes would be wide open. I was like, I probably did that. Well, I was probably too tired to do that with you guys, but with Tatiana, I was like, no words, just a smile and a love. And so I think that really
What
it's
about
communication.
like dividing up? I know my dad wasn't around a lot when we were infants because of work, but what about dividing up duties? Is it better to have a clear schedule? Like, this is when you'll do X, Y, and Z. This is when I'll do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
Or is it what's the...
No, I would definitely have your schedules, like how you're going to help each other, who's going to do what duties. Think of yourself as a mom during this phase. Don't think of yourself as a dad. Be hands-on with the baby as much as possible, and just be present.
Okay, so our camera died mid-conversation, and we really lost all the juicy stuff from this podcast. But fret not, because we will have Kit on again, and she has so much wisdom to share.